Hey everyone, and welcome back to Studio 3B. Today I wanted to go through a little bit about Linux and why I think it might be a viable alternative to Windows and macOS. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so I thought I would just dive into a little bit about this Linux installation I have put together. And I wanted to show you around, and usually I'm familiar with the macOS operating system. I usually operate on a Hackintosh. I do have quite a bit of experience installing and using Linux. My distro of choice would be Debian, mostly because it's a solid operating system. It's well tested and it has a strong library of applications available in the apt repository. So I really wanted to just go through this Linux installation and see why it is a viable alternative to even macOS and Windows. There are some things you're going to have to work around, things that you're not used to, but the upside is if you're feeling relatively intelligent and patient with learning a new operating system and the power of the command line, you could really get just about everything you need up and running in Linux for free. And it is going to be very rock solid. It's going to be reliable. Did I say free? And also you have many opportunities for software that usually you have to pay for. So again, it comes down to the cost. It has no cost, but it has a lot of community of developers behind it. So they're all very good options. All right, without further ado, let's dive into my Debian installation and show you a little bit about what you can do in here. So this is my desktop. I've installed Debian KDE. KDE is the desktop environment. There is several different types of desktop environments. There's KDE, there's GNOME or GNOME, whatever you want to call it. There's even lots of others. There's Mate, Cinnamon, and lots of different other desktop environments. So basically, Linux is the operating system, and the desktop environment is what you interact with. This is the visual graphical user interface, so to speak, that you interact with the operating system. So KDE looks a little bit like Windows in a sense that you have a start action on the bottom left, and it gives you a menu. Now this menu I've configured to look similar to macOS in the sense of the launchpad, but there's so much configuration you can do in KDE. There's so much configuration you can do in Linux in general. The nice thing about Linux is, yeah, you can tailor it to be exactly what you want it to be. And especially with Debian, you can tailor it pretty well. Other distros like Arch Linux, you could really tailor it to be minimalistic and only have what you need. There are different distributions that suit different purposes and are more or less cutting edge, bleeding edge, or stable, or even like behind the times a little bit. But Debian is just one notch behind the times, but it opts for stability. And that's why I like it. I don't like to be working and have things just crash because of software incompatibilities because something just came out that night. I had been working in Arch Linux in the past, and it's great. You can do everything that you need it to do, but if you need to rely on that operating system and something fails with an update, you're kind of out of luck for a few hours until you find a solution. Anyway, off of that tangent, I installed Debian because mostly just the curiosity in me. I'm very familiar with Linux, but I typically rely on macOS just because it is so stable and the software is very well written and the graphical user interface is very polished. That being said, I feel a little closed in with macOS and Windows in general too, like just the big operating systems. I feel a little bit like my hand is being held, and there's just a little bit lack of freedom when it comes to certain things. And that's really just a preference and a perspective, I would say. I feel like Linux really opens the door wide to your creativity, to your ingenuity, and your ability to just build something for yourself. And like I said, you do have to get familiar with the command line and all the different Linux commands to really make it work. Most software can really easily be installed with one or two commands. There are some pieces of software, if you want similar functionality, you're going to have to compile certain pieces or do some configuration manually. But that's part of the package with Linux in general. As you can see here on my taskbar, I have my different applications just like you would in Windows. This is my system settings. You click that and you get like a billion settings in here. You could change everything, styles, looks, behaviors, and all that. So KDE is very customizable and you could make it look and feel exactly the way you want it to be. There is a software center, which is more of a graphical user interface. Typically, you can just install software with the command line. So the terminal is where your home base is going to be for just about everything you do. If you're going to install software, you're going to do sudo apt install whatever software you want to install. The other way to do it would be using the software center, which I don't ever really use, but it's good for finding software, and I don't really use it. Actually, to find software, I typically just look on Google and I say, I'm looking for this particular piece of software, and I put the word Linux or Debian in it, and it will give me different commands or different options for that software solution. So, for example, I installed Digicam, and I got into photography a little bit ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I just noodled around with a camera that was given to me. So initially I had been putting all my raw photos up in iCloud. So that was working out pretty well. There's a minimalist Lightroom type functionality in Apple Photos where you can adjust the hues and everything. And that worked out pretty well. But then again, you're taking up paid space on the cloud, which is something I'm not willing to get rid of yet. And B, you're kind of locked into the ecosystem of Apple. Whether you like that or not, that's what you come with when you deal with Apple, and it's either good or bad depending on if you're a fan or not. Digicam is kind of like Apple Photos, so let's look at Digicam. I already have it installed, and I'm just going to go through different alternatives to certain things you're going to find in the macOS or Windows environment. And this is my son. Let's find something else. All right, yeah. So here's some random pictures that I took in the backyard. Let's see. Here's a picture of an American flag. It's a JPEG. I didn't shoot in RAW apparently with this one. So let's see here. CR2 would be RAW. So let's look at this picture. Here's a picture of the sun coming up over the clouds, and yeah, this is just more of a browser. You can see all your different stuff. I think you can edit photos here, but what I realized is, like in Apple Photos, you could just edit the photo right there. There's a better software program, so this is good for browsing. There's a better software program for editing photos, and that is called Raw Therapy. Let's open that up. Hopefully it does open. There it goes. Same spot where I just was. Family photo shoot. Let's see here. That's fine. So it has the same browser type functionality. Let's go into this day here. And all right. So here's like the similar pictures, and they're all opened up in this program. But what this program allows you to do, let's open up this basketball hoop. You can go in and edit all the hues and white balance and exposure and everything right here. So if I want to increase the exposure and white it out, or you get instant feedback, and it works pretty well, just like it did in Apple Photos. Other than that, this is free and it's sitting on my local computer. To work around the backup solution, you could either back up to a local hard drive or server, but typically these days I'm recommending backing up to the cloud. So you're going to have to find a viable cloud backup solution for Linux. And that's something that comes with Apple, and it comes with Microsoft. You have Microsoft OneDrive, you have Apple Drive. You're going to have to find a Linux backup solution. So you can upload to those two cloud solutions with third-party extensions that you run. They're more command line though. They're not quite as integrated to the desktop as those two solutions. You can use Dropbox and all those other stuff. But one thing you have to think about with Linux is backup solutions and finding a good cloud backup solution. So that's Photos. What I wanted to get into, since I'm going to have to edit this YouTube video. Okay, I'm going to have to edit this video. So what can I do to edit it? Typically, I use Final Cut Pro in Mac, and that's a great software program. But let's just go back to the Software Center real quick so I could show you. There's a video editor program that gets pretty good ratings, and it's Kdenlive. So you can either click install here, or you can go to the command line, which is what I prefer. And you always do like an apt update, right? Because that just gets the latest and greatest information from the servers. And then you just do a sudo apt install Kdenlive. And then it just asks you, do you want to install this? And I just click yes. And anybody who's ever used a Debian-based Linux distribution, Ubuntu is one, the biggest one I would say. Mint, Linux Mint, they all use apt-get. It is the repository that contains like billions of software programs that you can get. I don't know about billions, maybe millions. Okay, so we have Kdenlive installed. So let's see if we can get some video editing functionality installed on Linux. So Kdenlive. Looks like a nice splash screen, and right there we go. There's video editor. And you know, earlier today I did a test video. So if I go to, now you have a file browser here. Okay, so this is just like any other operating system. And I have this video here. And let me look at this video real quick. I'm gonna put my headphones on so I can hear. This is a test. This is only a test. Testing. That is, okay, that is a video of me testing. All right, let's see if we could kind of drag this into Kdenlive and import it and kind of edit it a little bit. All right, we just dragged it right in. Now I'm sure there's a good learning curve going on with this because it is new software, and anytime you learn new software, there's a learning curve. It takes you some time to familiarize yourself with all the menu options, all the commands, the shortcut keys, everything. But let's see. So it's asking me here, do I want to switch it to 30 FPS, frames per second? So let's just do that. I don't know. I think that's what I recorded it in, was 30. All right. So now we have a timeline down here. Let's drag it in here. Let's see. Oh, so there's the top one and this one. Now let's see if I could play this little clip here. This is a test. This is only a test. Testing. All right. That was pretty cool. All right. So let's see if I can zoom in. How do I zoom? I'll just do the mouse wheel. No, that does pan left and right. All right. Let's just, you can't drag it out. How do you zoom in? Can I drag this? No. Let's do Control plus. There it is. All right, so you can go in here. You can look at little sections. It's only a test. Yep. And can you cut it? You can cut clip. I just did a cut right there, and you can move it around. So this might be a viable editing solution for video. I would say you probably want to proxy your media so you're working with a lower res files when you're working in your video editing software, so you're not like lagging your computer when you're editing. I don't know if there's a setting for that, but yeah, it's worth experimenting with all these programs in Linux. There is, for everything you have in the commercial environment of Windows and Mac, you're going to have at least 3 or 4 different viable solutions in Linux. And some of them may make the cut, some of them may not, but it's up to your preference, you know, and it's up to how you use that software. So I think I'm going to edit this YouTube video on Kdenlive, and maybe I'll come back to you in the future with a little review of that particular software program. Now, many software programs are cross-platform, and you can install them in every environment, so you don't have to lose, you know, your learning curve. They're not always brand new software programs. Many software programs do not port to Linux, but many do. My editor of choice when I'm developing in code is Sublime Text. So what you usually do is, you know, go to a browser. I'm on the other screen here. So I did a Google search, and it gives you a command on how to install. This is app. That's what we're using. And it tells you how to install Sublime Text on Linux. So you're going to have to just basically download it and install it this way. Yeah, it looks like you have to add this key to your sources first and then install from apt. So let's do that. So I'm going to clear the screen. All right, and install this software. So a lot of times I just copy and paste it. You can just type it out, but you might have a typo. So let's put that in there. And then I want stable, because I don't want the development version. And now you just update. So now the Sublime text is in my apt repository. So I could just go ahead and install that. All right, now if you just go to your menu, all of a sudden, without a restart, you just have this editor. There you go. You have an editor here that you're familiar with if you use this editor. And I suppose that you can just kind of be off to the races there. Now, one thing Linux thrives in is for software developers, especially open source software developers like Java developers, PHP developers. I don't know how well .NET has been coming along. I think there are certain libraries you can use in .NET and certain ways you can program in .NET and Linux. I don't have too much familiarity with that. I know it's mostly a Windows solution. But most other programming languages are perfect for developing in Linux, and Java is one of them. So I have Eclipse installed. I do some Java development sometimes, and you can install Eclipse, and that has all the features of Java development that you might need. You can also use Visual Studio Code. That's available in Linux. Let's see what other things that we have in here. There are many other features and software types that you can install on Linux. So let's see. Let's go to all applications. Sticking on the developer track. Let's see. What else is developer? Oracle VirtualBox. If you ever have to develop in a virtual machine or even test other operating systems, VirtualBox runs perfectly on Linux as long as your computer has virtualization, which it usually does. Microsoft Teams is even available in Linux, believe it or not. Communication software, Teams, Signal. Signal is an open source, very popular these days, alternative to WhatsApp and everything, because WhatsApp was bought by Facebook and some people have some security thoughts. So Firefox is very well supported on Linux. Chrome is also supported on Linux. Now, typically, when you get a Linux distribution and you want to install Chrome, you install the open source version called Chromium. Chromium, however, works perfectly just like Chrome. It's actually the source for Chrome, built for Linux. But some of the user bookmark sync features and profile sync features didn't quite work for me in Debian 10, which is what I have installed. So you can add, like we did with Sublime, you could add a new repo in your apt source list, and you could download the actual proprietary Google Chrome. And that is what I use now because it has the profile sync feature available. This is Google Chrome. I've installed LastPass. Okay. That has all my passwords for everything in it. That's available in Linux. And this is me trying to figure out how to get my iPhone to work in OBS Studio. So obviously I've got OBS Studio installed. I'm connected with an iPhone using the camera. So that compatibility is there too. So yeah, it just takes a little digging sometimes, but you can get most things to work. And the nice thing about it, I keep saying the F word, sorry, but the free features that you get from Linux are just astounding. I mean, the fact that you get so much value for nothing, just a little elbow grease, really, is great. So we've looked at photo editing, we've looked at video editing, we've looked at some developer tools, we looked at browsers, audio. Reaper is available in Linux. And one thing about audio that is a downside on Linux is plugins. The Waves plugins are just not compatible with Linux. I mean, I think there's a hack you can do with Wine. Wine is the Windows emulator for Linux, and I don't like to use Wine. For some reason, I just feel repelled from it. It just feels like you're hacking your computer a little too much. I think you can get Waves plugins to work if you hack it just a bit, but out of the box, you're not going to have any Waves plugins. You're not going to have any like real plugins that you get purchased in Mac or Windows environments. So the thing is, you can use these open source VST plugins that come with your DAW. I think you could download open source plugins that are free, but you're going to have to settle for those and not the professional level Waves or anyway. I just Googled plugins for Linux. Yes, there's lots of professional plugins on Mac and Windows, but what do you have for Linux? And by the way, when you're dealing with audio in Linux, it is a little bit of a headache. If you have to use something called Jack, you need to have a little bit of a learning curve on how it works and all that. But let's see, you do have the Steinberg VST. I've heard some good things about that and some of these other types of plugins. So let's see. This might be a new thing for me too. I've never used the Steinberg plugins, and I don't even know if they're free or not. So they look like they sell them. I think you have to pay for the Steinberg stuff. Let's see if we can say download Steinberg VSTs. Let's see here. So we have Reaper. Let's see if there's a Reaper in here. Anyway, I don't even know if Steinberg plugins work with Reaper itself. Reaper does come with some out-of-the-box plugins, good amount of plugins. And they're a little plain. Like if you want to install a compressor, they're a little bit boring to look at, but they work. And they work well. So you can get the job done. But, typically, like if you're going to be mixing with lots of plugins, I would definitely switch to a Mac for that at this time. I mean, this is 2021, so who knows what they're going to come out with in the future. So, all right. So Reaper works, and it works well. It's just that the plugin situation is a little dry. Remote desktop, Remina. If you want to remote into another computer, if you want access to your Windows box or whatever you got in the house, you could use Remina. And that works pretty well. And let's see. Okay, music. Clementine is my go-to for that. So, yeah, let's listen to this. I can't play too much of it. Yeah, there's the bell. Yeah, you have all your artists and everything. I added this for my server and you play all your music and voila. Clementine is good. It sounds great. It can play high-res audio, not just MP3s. And it's just got a lot of great features. It's well supported. Let's see what else we got here on Linux. Oh, GIMP. If you want to edit pictures, I think GIMP is the go-to for that. Yeah, GIMP image. Now, if you're into Photoshop, this might be your deal. I don't know how to use GIMP. I don't even know how to use Photoshop, but supposedly this has a lot of the tools. I mean, there might be some shortcomings, and I think Photoshop is just a little more polished and professional, but this does everything you need to do and more, and it's way cheaper than Photoshop, like free. So Signal is a chat software. It's like I said, it's like WhatsApp, but free and secure and private, I should say. Darktable is another photo editor program, like Lightroom. Dragon Player plays videos, all kinds of videos. A VLC is available in Linux as well. And what else we got? You can burn CDs. All this stuff. You could look at your partitions. Linux excels at accessing data on your hard drives. So I could actually access my Mac disk from Linux. So I mounted my Mac disk using a APFS Fuse library. And once you configure that, you can go in here and here's my profile and there's my macOS data. It's all read only, but at least I can get to it. So if you have a file on the other partition, on the other boot drive, you can get to that. Teams, I'm not going to show you all my conversations, but it works. It works well. And, Mail, Thunderbird. I have that synced to my Gmail. The one thing it doesn't do is, like, if you log into Gmail in the browser, you get promotions and and everything's separated from your real mail. And Thunderbird just kind of downloads it all into one bucket. But it's a great way to manage your mail locally, and it works really well. I'm not going to show you my mail, but hey, it looks like I got Google Hangouts, which isn't supported anymore. So that's most of the applications that I have installed so far. I have this dual booting to my Hackintosh partition, and so what I do is when I boot up, I just hit delete, get to the boot BIOS, and switch the boot disk. You can configure your Hackintosh. I use OpenCore, so you can configure the boot screen to boot up Linux as well. So you can have one boot screen for both your operating systems. Just haven't done that on this particular installation yet, but it is possible. And I don't know why this is not working, but it is quite easy to kill anything that's not working. Oh, what is this? Oh, it's just asking for my password. That's all it was. Oh, I didn't type that right. It's asking for my administrator password. There. So now, okay, so I have my 240 gigabyte Linux installation right there, and then I have a 1 terabyte macOS installation there. And you can just partition anything in here, look at them, destroy your disks, whatever you want to do. So it's pretty fun. Back to KDE. I think that's about it for now. I just want to show you that you do have this do not disturb feature, which is really nice. I use that a lot when I'm in meetings. I don't want annoying email messages to pop up. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to thank you for sitting through this kind of Linux walkthrough and seeing what software programs I have installed and how I'm using them as an alternative to my Hackintosh or even Windows solutions. So give Linux a try if you have the time and the patience and the ability to learn a new operating system, learn some command line tools and everything like that. I would say definitely go for it. You'd save a lot of money in the long run. You're going to be smarter. You're going to know how software works inside and out, and it's going to really help you become a better human being.